Ever since I was little, I possessed an innate ability to solve equations and read textbooks at school. It was peculiar. It was as if, while I read a book or a piece of literature, the words were automatically highlighted in my head. Lines connected various sentences and contexts, showing me how they were linked. It even seemed like I was reading between the lines, uncovering hidden meanings in those texts. I had logical analysis, grammatical analysis, summarization, meaning. Everything I could possibly know from a text seemed to automatically present itself in my brain. Mathematics was the same way. Numbers seemed to move and shift on their own. Multiplications and divisions happened completely autonomously, beyond my will. Equations solved themselves, providing results. At first, I performed operations on my own to verify if the results were correct. But after numerous experiments, I realized that my ability was infallible. I was very content with this power, with my ability to see the meanings behind things, behind textbooks, behind equations, behind problems. It felt like everything unfolded before my eyes. A series of lines, underlines, highlights, arrows, all of it right before my eyes, pointing out the right solution to my problems. As I grew, this ability developed in parallel with my mental and cultural growth. It began to highlight the characteristics of people, their behaviors as well. It was as if there were lines underlining shifts in their gaze or tone of voice, where their gaze was directed, and how a message was conveyed. A little voice in my head would tell me something like, "They're lying," or "They have something important to tell you," or even "Bad news is coming." I never questioned this ability, never wondered where it came from, until numbers and sentences began to get very strange. I didn't question it until, while reading textbooks or messages from my friends, the meanings I found with my strange ability became increasingly dark and convoluted. Reading a message from my friends, my ability strangely began to detect hostility, unfriendliness, and violent intentions toward me. Every time I read a message, the underlines and lines would get to work, and in the end, the response, the red writing that appeared between the lines, would always say, "They want to harm you," or "You shouldn't have them around. Keep your distance." Sometimes, it even encouraged me to do something bad to them, like during a test, passing them the wrong answer or revealing their secret without them knowing it was me. It was strange. Usually, these letters, these numbers that appeared in front of texts and things were simply indications. They provided the truth behind things. They had never expressed opinions. They had never said what they thought, and it was rather strange that they did now. I had always considered it a kind of power of my mind, but now it seemed like there was something else thinking inside my brain. Things worsened as time passed. I started having nightmares, and in the nightmares, there were always letters, writings, underlines, arrows, messages. They kept telling me things I didn't want to hear, kept emphasizing that everyone I knew, all the impersonal relationships I had, all the people I knew, all of them intended to harm me. I saw my hands and my body doing things I didn't want to do. I saw myself hurting my friends, my family, the people I cared about most. The burden became heavier and more pressing. It's so annoying and so macabre that every time you talk to a friend, every time you receive a message from them, you only see hatred coming from them, and a voice from the letters kept telling you that you must feel hatred towards them yourself. I even started hearing an actual voice. At first, I thought it was just my way of reading those sentences, but then I noticed that those sentences were automatically read in my voice, in my tone of voice, and sometimes that voice not only read the sentences that appeared before my eyes but also started giving me horrible advice. The worst part, however, was when I realized that this voice wasn't simply something in my head. I was terrified at the thought that I might be slowly going insane. I absolutely don't want to be locked up in an asylum. It's just a voice in my head. I can control it. My body is mine. It's just a voice in my head. It doesn't exist, or at least that's what I thought, until one time, a friend of mine coming from behind was giving me a friendly pat on the shoulder, but those writings, those arrows, highlighted a danger behind me, and my hands moved faster than I could control them. I grabbed my friend's arm, twisted, and made him fall in front of me, on his back. My friend ended up in the hospital, screaming, with a fractured shoulder, and probably a lot of back injuries. At school, the teachers were astonished. I had never shown violent behavior before. After that incident, things got worse. I couldn't talk to anyone anymore. I was afraid of hurting people, and the voices kept emphasizing that everyone was suspicious of me. And maybe it's true. Maybe everyone really does suspect me. They find me strange. They consider me crazy after what I've done. But these voices, these numbers that I keep seeing, the level of suspicion, their glances, they are all underlined. I can pick out faces in the crowd that are looking at me, circled in red, and the voice keeps repeating, all of them want to harm you. In the end, I couldn't take it anymore. I gave in when I realized that throughout the day, I always had this damned voice in my head. I always had these damned sentences, these damned numbers that showed me everything, told me everything according to their will. I had realized that there was something in my head now. There was another person in my head who spoke, who thought, and who tried in every way to influence me. And when I was more stressed, he could even take over. It was a strange voice. It seemed to want to indulge my deepest desires. Sometimes, for example, when I tried to go on a diet to lose some weight, it would tell me no, eat, see how good it is. When I tried to restrain myself after an argument, it suggested violence instead, urged me to imagine how I could harm others, in how many ways I could torture them. I went to a psychologist, and he was the one to tell me that I suffered from bipolar disorder. I asked him what it was, and he replied, "It's having a split personality. In your case, your second personality is a very particular one. It's the personality that reflects all the desires you suppress, everything you can't do due to societal prohibitions, your parents' prohibitions, moral prohibitions. It's a second personality that would like to do everything that's forbidden, everything that's evil, everything that's illegal, but also everything you deeply desire, even things you wouldn't admit to wanting." I asked him how I could cure myself, what medication I should take, but the psychologist was actually optimistic. He simply told me, "Relax. The only thing you have to do is be honest with yourself. Don't hide your desires. Try to fulfill them on your own. Just be careful to control yourself and not reach extreme levels." So I did, until I started sleepwalking. When my parents noticed that I was walking in my sleep and talking in my sleep, they didn't have the courage to tell me what I was saying in my sleep, what I was doing in my sleep. Every morning, I greeted them, and they looked sad, and I asked them what's wrong, and they would just say, "Yesterday, you were sleepwalking and talking." And when I asked them what I said, they never told me, but they had very worried expressions, sometimes even scared. I saw my mother cry once, supported by my father. It was at that moment that I realized something was wrong. I also had severe headaches, increasingly stronger headaches when I didn't try to fulfill the desires of this second voice. A strong migraine would split my skull literally in two. The numbers seemed to go crazy in front of my eyes. The pains became so strong that they led me to a neurologist this time. They did that strange procedure. I don't know what it's called. The one where they put you in a sort of chamber and scan your brain. When I was done, the doctor brought me to my parents and, showing the scan, said, "There's something wrong." He showed me the scan. There was my brain, and the shape seemed normal. The usual two hemispheres connected in the center. But then he showed me another scan. That part that connected to the center was a bit smaller. And he told me this, pointing to the first one, "This is your brain," and pointing to the second one, "This is a normal brain." I looked at him, took it in my hand, and asked, "Can I touch it?" He smiled at me and said, "Of course, I touched that piece of flesh that used to be inside my brain." And finally, I whispered, "Finally, no more cage." Slowly, I brought that piece of brain to my mouth and ate it. Now I told the doctor, "I'm free." Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel for more creepypastas. Until the next one.